a blessed new moon, a blessed first day of the month of Sheshvan. As we are counting, this one is the 8th month, meaning that we are left with 4 more months for us to reach the end of the year. I want to welcome you all to the first day of the month of Sheshvan, which is a Sabbath. And we know the new moons and the Sabbath, we will be continuing with them in the new heaven and the new earth. I want to welcome you all to the studies of the first month. That's why you saw in Revelation, it says there will be 12 12 fruits that we are going to be eating. So it means each fruit is eaten on the beginning of the month. Each new moon has a fruit, each new moon a fruit, and that fruit is the messages, is the word of God. So let me welcome you all to the first day of the month, Sheshvan. We are going to study, and my topic is saying, how is the kingdom going to be started? And we saw, when we read Ezekiel chapter 17, we saw that there are 3 steps to it. And this is what we want to study today and find out these 3 steps. Now let's go to Ezekiel chapter 17, verse 22 and 23, so that we can identify the 3 steps. Let us read.
Ezekiel 17,
verse 22, yeah?
Verse 22.
Yeah.
Thus saith the Lord God, I will also take of the highest branch of the high cedar,
right,
and will set it. I will crop off from it the top of his young twigs, a tender one, and will plant it upon an high mountain and eminent.
Right. So we saw this highest branch taken to be planted on the highest mountain. So let's hear verse 23. Verse 23, what does it say?
In the mountain of the height of Israel,
right,
will I plant it.
That's why the initial stage of the kingdom, how it is set, God said, I will take the highest branch and set it on the top of the mountains of Israel. That's what he has said. But let's understand, there are 3 stages that we started from some time. We started these 3 stages. Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 11 on the estates of Ellen White. You'll find in the Bible, Isaiah chapter 11. We want to see those 3 stages just to run them so that we know why God is saying, I will take the highest branch and take it to plant it on the mountains of Israel. So we want to study how the kingdom is going to be set up. Right, read on.
Isaiah 11 verse 1.
Verse 1, yeah.
And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse,
right,
and a branch shall grow out from his roots.
Right. So we have seen the 3 stages. The first stage is that there is a stem of Jesse. Now, how do we find out? When you are planting a tree, you cut a stick from another tree, isn't it? And you sink it on the soil. And when it is on the soil, the first thing that comes is the roots are inside the soil, and then there is a stem which comes up. Now this is the stem of Jesse, which has 2 stages. What are these two stages? One, the root, and the stem, which germinates when you plant a tree. So the root we started before. If you want, you can go back to the video which shows about how the 3rd message is going to be, the 3rd seal is going to emanate. So you find that the root and the stem are 2 stages. One, the root was standing in for William Miller's message, the first angel's message. And then the stem was standing in for Sister White's message. So those 2 were under the root and the stem. Then what comes out of the tree after it has a stem, it comes up with a rod. So we find we have people called rod, who came from the rod, which are called Davidians. You understand? So the next thing we have after Davidians, we have the highest calling, which is what comes up from the rod. A branch shall come up. So you see, there's 3 stages. We had Now, William Miller is just the root where the Adventism started from, because he was preaching the Advent or the coming of Christ. That's what Advent means. So the root was William Miller. Next, we have the stem, which was Sister White's message, and then next we had a rod, which was Brother Hotep's message, and then lastly we had a branch message, which was coming from Brother Roden. So now he is saying, when we go to Ezekiel chapter 17, he's saying now at the level, when we are at the level of the message of the branch, so those who are supposed to be in the branch message, these are the people God is saying, I'll take them first, plant them. Because why is he doing that in that last stage? Because he has already called, when he said the Lord shall come out of Zion, he was calling for when you go to prophets of Revelation 12, you would find that when the woman in the persecution during Constantine's time, when the very first phase, when Christ left the Christian church, it was invaded by paganism. And then there was so much persecution because the Christians were arguing that we cannot have the times and laws changed. You understand? That's all in Revelation chapter 12. Go to Revelation chapter 12. When those times were changed, the Christians were persecuted, but we saw a woman being given eagle's wings to fly into the wilderness. Just run to that prophecy first, and then we will understand Ezekiel chapter 17 properly. When you see these three phases, why are they coming? Because God had foreseen that when the woman flew into the wilderness, the woman refused to come back to the metropolitan city where Christ had left the early Christian church. It was the headquarters of the Christian. It was in Jerusalem. When Christ left the early Christian church, the disciples were having their headquarters in Jerusalem. So this is where the woman had eagle's wings and was given wings to fly into the wilderness to escape persecution, which was 1,260 days. But after that, the woman was supposed to come back. But instead, the woman didn't come back. So God has a plan in Ezekiel chapter 17, verse 22, as we read. The plan was to take now the branch, which will first know the first stage. When we are in the branch level, so we have three levels. We came from William Miller, Sister White, and then we wrote, and then next we have a branch message. All these messages were the ones that God was sending into the church. Though people were being chased, but they still, the messages will follow. Like it was when Martin Luther, John Knox, and they were all given messages to reform. Though they were being cast out, but the messages kept on coming. So this is exactly what happened with us. The messages came, and William Miller took up the Advent message. And next, Sister White took up the next third Elias message. And next, the rod. We have now people from the rod, which are the Davidians. And then next, the last phase, the branch message from Brother Roden. So all that was on Isaiah chapter 11. So why then did he have all those three stages? Because the woman was stuck in the wilderness, did not want to come back where Christ had established the Christian church. So it says, but in the last day, in Isaiah chapter 2, we find Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2, it says, in the last day, the people will, before you read Revelation 12, go to Isaiah chapter 2, and we hear, which last days is Isaiah talking about? Read on.
And it shall come to pass,
right,
in the last days, that the mountain of the Lord's house,
right,
shall be established in the top of the mountain.
So Isaiah is talking the same thing with Ezekiel, that the branch will be taken, the branch level will be taken from the top of the branch, taken to be established on the mountain. Isaiah is talking about the same thing when Isaiah is saying, in the last day, read Isaiah chapter
in the last days, that the mountain of the Lord's house,
right,
shall be established in the top of the mountains,
Right.
and shall be exalted above the hills,
Right.
and all nations shall flow unto it.
Do you see Ezekiel 17 and Isaiah? They are talking of the same thing in the last days. Why God was saying, you go back then where the woman. So we want to see the woman being given eagle's wings to fly into the wilderness. And then when the woman is in the wilderness, refused to come back. But we are seeing in the last day, people will flock back to Mount Zion, to Israel, again in the top of the mountain. So how do they fly to the top of the mountain? It's because people have gone through the three phases. One, the root, the stem, the rod, and the branch, which is in Isaiah chapter 11. This is the stage which the house of God has to go through. Whether people refuse, those who refuse remain, and those who take up continue. And then those who also refuse as rod, they remain, and some take up as a branch. Now when they are in the level of the branch truth, they are now taken into the high mountain. So let's see in Revelation chapter 12. The history of the church is there in Revelation chapter 12. Go to verse 1, right?
Verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
And there appeared a great wonder in heaven,
Right?
a woman
Yeah.
clothed with the sun,
Right?
and the moon under her feet,
Mhm.
and upon her head a crown of 12 stars.
So when he says a woman in heaven, so when the church represents a woman, there is a woman already in heaven, and it means also the church started from heaven. You understand? Why represented by a woman? Because already there is a woman. We've been arguing that point, we know. So there is a woman who was seen where? Not on earth, but in heaven. But this woman was dressed, one, with the sun. There's no other cloth, the sun. You understand? And on the head there is a crown of 12 stars, right? And on top of the sun, and then under the feet, what is there? The moon. Now, people have fanciful interpretation of this woman. Some say it's the Christian church. But I say, no, it is not the Christian church. It was the Jewish church, which is the one that was preparing for the birth of Christ. Why do I say so? It's because this following verse showed that the woman was pregnant on the last days of pregnancy, traveling in birth. So the Christian church did not deliver Christ, but the Jewish church delivered is the one that had girls, virgins who were struggling to say they are the ones going to carry the baby Christ. Read on, let's hear.
And she being with child, cried, travailing in birth.
So you see, the woman is already. If the child who is in the womb of the woman is Christ, it can't be the Christian church. It cannot be established before he is born. So that's my argument there. It's not the Christian church. This woman was the Jewish church. Why do I say so? Because it had 12 stars. One, it was dressed in sun. Two, on top of, under the feet was the moon. When do we see the moon? At night. Do you understand? So this woman had gone through two phases. What is the symbol of the sun? The sun is for the 105 says, Psalms 105 says, thy lamp is the what? Is thy word is the light. So the light, which was the sun, represent the time. The woman has gone through two phases where there was a Bible and where there was no Bible. And the Jewish church fits snugly into that prophecy because it had two phases. When they walked out of Egypt, they didn't have a Bible. So what was leading them? Only prophets. Prophets were the ones taking from God, taking from the light. Do you understand? Where does the moon take the light from? From the sun. So where were they taking their light before the Bible was written? From the light which is Christ. You understand? So this is the symbol of the moon under their feet. You understand? So, but they also had a period where they were under the sun, where Moses has written the Bible. So it fits snugly in the prophecy. And 12 was a symbol of the 12 tribes of Israel. This symbol of 12 is there all over throughout, from the beginning to the end. We find the 12 patriarchs, we find the 12 gates of the New Jerusalem, we found the 12 foundations, of the. So we find also Christ going with 12 disciples. We find 12 times 120, which received the former rain. That is also a dividend of 12. So you understand that 12 is a symbol of authority. So this woman was invested with authority, or the church had authority. This is the woman who gave birth to Christ. Do you understand? Now let's read on.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven.
Right.
And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
Now, if you see how these symbols of the heads, the head we saw in Isaiah chapter 2 already, the mountain of the Lord's house, the head is a mountain. In Revelation chapter 17, verse 9, it tells us a woman sitting on the head is sitting on a mountain. So the mountain, what is a mountain? The mountain is the Lord's house. So this symbol of 7 heads on the dragon, and how many? 10 horns. So it's coming with another system of worship, which is not from the woman. So you see, the woman has got 12 stars and dressed with the sun, and on top of the moon. So the woman is separate from what the devil is bringing. Is bringing another false worship, which is 7, which is complete. 7 heads were originating from the devil himself, because it's the red dragon, you understand, and it's got 10 horns, which are kingdoms, you understand, and all this, there is a system coming from the devil. If you are not careful, you go inside that system, you understand. So we are not on the prophets of Revelation 12, but we can do it on another day. But we want to find out where this woman, is it true the woman fled to the wilderness? And where we see the woman established the headquarters, we are no longer established in Jerusalem, because all headquarters were where the land was discovered, which had no one inhabiting. But God calls that land a wilderness, because there was no one there. And we know this land, which it was, where all the headquarters, it provided refuge for those who were running away from paganism when the persecution was there. We know where it is. So all that is called a wilderness by this prophecy. You understand? Read on.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head.
Right. We know the devil came from heaven, but he came also with a system of falsehood. Because what started in heaven is the argument that the law shouldn't be kept, the statutes, the feasts shouldn't be kept. All that we are arguing on earth started in heaven. So if we argue and say God's law shouldn't be kept, the feast shouldn't be kept, the judgment shouldn't be kept, the covenant shouldn't be kept, you know who is the author of all that. Because the author of the woman dressed in white is got all the things that were with the Moses, that were with the Adam, that were with the Abraham, that were with Jesus, that were with Paul, that are going to be infested to the 144,000. They will have everything that the woman has. So now God wants to take back the fact that we see the 144,000 standing with Christ on Mount Zion, now in Jerusalem. It means the woman surely, though the woman refused, but the 144,000, they agreed to go back to the metropolitan city where Christ had left. He had left the Christian church well established after the woman gave birth. So because the woman was traveling in birth, and what happened when he was traveling back? Revelation 12.
Okay. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered.
Right.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
Right.
And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven.
You see, the dragon has got also the systems of worship, which are 7 heads. It also has got the system of kingdoms, which are 10 horns. It also has got authority crowned on the heads. That's what we have had. Now, read on.
And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven.
Of course, the devil was thrown on the earth with a third part of the angels. We know that. That's the tail. Drawing all those who went on his side in heaven, the angels, they were thrown back on the earth with him. We know this prophecy, right? Uh-huh.
And did cast them to the earth.
Right.
And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered,
right,
for to devour her child as soon as it was
we knew how Herod, after the wise men went through Herod and said, we are following a star, the king has been born. And Herod said, go, when you find the baby who has been born, come and tell me where the baby is. But the angel told the wise men not to go back to Herod and tell Herod where the baby was. And because of that, Herod had to kill all children under 2 years. This is what happened. We know this is the prophecy. We say the dragon was waiting for the male child to be born, to devour the child. So you see how all that is history, right? Uh-huh.
And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron.
Who is that male child who was brought forth? It is Christ. He is to rule all earth with a rod of iron. What is this rod of iron? Now we see that we have seen people emanating from the stem of Jesse, and then we see a rod, which when Moses was crossing, was taking the Israelites from Egypt to Israel. God said, when he was arguing with God on a burning bush, you remember, and he says, no, I stammer. And they said, no, you take your brother Aaron. Yeah? And they took the brother Aaron and Miriam, the sister. And now he still wanted another sign. And God said, what do you have on your hand? He said, I have a rod. Do you understand? This is the rod of iron that Moses had. And because of that rod all the way, he was using that rod. Because God said, throw the rod on the floor, and it became a serpent. To catch it by the tail, caught it by the tail. It was that rod. And then also, when they were crossing the Red Sea, God used the rod again. You understand? This rod was standing for something. This baby born was to rule the whole world with the rod. But what was this rod? That's another topic on its own. So this rod was infested with authority from heaven. This is what Moses was now later on told from Mount Sinai to write. Write what? Write all. What did he descend with in Mount Sinai? Go to Nehemiah chapter 9 verse 13. What was it that was given? That was the one that he had authority when he was walking everywhere with the rod. Everywhere with the rod. That is the authority that he had. What he was being told on Mount Sinai. Read. Uh-huh.
Thou camest down also upon Mount Sinai,
right,
and spakest with them from heaven,
right,
and gavest them right judgments and true laws, good statutes and commandments.
So what was he given? So people say he was given 10 commandments only, and no. He was given all that, the 10 commandments, statutes, judgments, laws. All that was the meter, the rod, which he will rule with. You understand? So when Christ is coming, he's going to rule the whole world with the rod. What is it? That's why he now sends us back to keeping the statutes, which are the feasts, the 10 commandments, the judgments. All that are all incorporated in the rod that Moses was. That's why Moses was the writer of all these laws. He went to write, to modify. That's why we are being told in John chapter 5. In 5, verse 45. You see, that's what Moses was now invested with authority to what? To govern with those laws. You understand? Now, read.
Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one that accuseth you.
There's one.
Even Moses.
One person is going to accuse you. Why? Because he was given on Mount Sinai all those follows. Moses is going to accuse you of what? Even Moses, what?
Whom ye trust.
Whom ye trust. Because when Christ was going around in his ministry, they will say, oh, we know our prophet, our previous. It's the job of the devil to make people trust the previous prophet and reject the living one who is already in front of them. So this is what they did to Christ. they trusted in Moses. Said, "If the very Moses whom you trust is the one that is going to accuse you." And what?
For had ye believed Moses,
Right?
ye would have believed me.
Right. So, in simple terms, if you are rejecting the next prophet, it means even the previous one you did not believe in, and which is for sure. If people are still eating the diet that Sister White condemned and say we have to take this diet as a people, it means you cannot believe even the next prophet. If you can't believe the previous, we saw on the history of Sister White how she was totally, discouraged about what the brethren, people like Uriah Smith, which she said, you ban all your books and everything. They did not believe in her. So if you can't believe in the previous prophet, how then? What a miracle it will be to believe in the next one. You cannot. You can really not. You understand? This was the order of the day in the time of Christ. They did not believe him, but they were believing Moses. So even Moses, whom you believe, is going there to judge. That's what he's promising these people. The Moses that you believe, read on.
For had ye believed Moses,
Right?
ye would have believed me.
Right.
For he wrote of me.
Right.
But if ye believe not his writings, how shall ye believe my words?
If you don't believe the writings of the previous prophet, how can then you jump and believe the next prophet? You can't. Even the very Sabbath, the people say they are keeping the Sabbath. They are not. They are not. If you can keep the Sabbath, then the new moon you will keep, because all of them were given at the same time. If you see it in Isaiah chapter 66, it says from one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another. So God did not just give the Sabbath without the statute of the new moon. So if you cannot keep the Sabbath, how then can it be a miracle for you to keep the new moon? It can't be. Just check yourself. Where do you start from? Are you not starting from the Sabbath to disregard the Sabbath first? And then if you can't keep the Sabbath, can you keep the new moon? Can you keep the Passover? It becomes all useless. Everything becomes a Greek to you, because you just cannot believe even the Sabbath. So how can you believe everything that God will give you? So listen, they did that to Christ. And then he says, the very Moses is going to accuse you. I'm not going to accuse you. Why was he referring to Moses to accuse them? Because he knew he gave Moses every law on Mount Sinai. He came and gave the right statutes, the good judgments, the 10 commandments, the good laws. All that was given on Mount Sinai. So Moses wrote all the 5 books elaborating what he has been given. And he says in New Testament, the very New Testament, he said, this very Moses is going to accuse you. Now go to Hebrews 10 verse 28. The very Moses who was told to write these statutes, all these statutes, right? We saw the 10 commandments written on the stone. And he was on the very first next verse there, you see how he's being instructed to write the statutes, everything. Now, Hebrews 10 verse 28.
He that despised Moses'
and he
law
who will despise Moses' law, yeah,
died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses.
on the judgment scene, the 24 elders are waiting. And I told you that another lesson where it says 24 elders, they came from the earth. When Christ rose up, they were part of the group that went to heaven with Christ. They rose up with Christ. So that's how they were selected. It was all coming back from the Old Testament. So that's why they were waking up. They were already 24 elders here on earth. If you want a good lesson on that. But what I was saying is that when they are there, why are they 24? Because 2 is for each tribe. People are made in a way that they belong to each tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel. So when in the judgment scene, they utter your name, 2 witnesses from that tribe where you come from. It says, even if these 2 are there, when you despise the law of Moses, we will die without pity. This is what the verse, repeat the verse.
He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses.
Right. So you see, under 2 or 3 witnesses, which is the 3rd witness? Right, of course, the angel that was walking with you. And what other 2 witnesses are the 24 elders, one of the two from these 24 elders, when they are there, when your name is being called off, they come because they come from the tribe where you come from. And when they come, when they discover that you did not do more, you despised Moses' law, even when they plead for you, they say, you will die without a witness. So it means your name will be taken off, finally, off the book of life, whether they plead for you or not. So let's go back to our lesson. It's just to further us. Why do I bring all these examples? At the end of the day, when we enter in the kingdom, we'll be able to see that the Bible was just one story coming from Genesis to Revelation. We'll be able to say it in one sentence. From Genesis, you should be knowing what is happening from Genesis, from Exodus, from Numbers, from Isaiah, from even the prophets Micah, Zechariah, and when Christ came with John the Baptist in Matthew, and up to the Revelation, you should be knowing exactly all the nitty-gritties from Genesis to the last book, which is Revelation. Everything that happened in each section should be up there. That's the sealing. You'll be sealed with all truth. But nobody can deceive you anymore. Once you have the seal, there is no deceiver. You understand? So here we are talking about Ezekiel. We have started reading from Ezekiel chapter 17, verse 22, where he says, "I'll take the tree." So what is this taking of this branch? Was it done? God knew that we were going to refuse. And when he knew we were going to refuse, he wrote it in somewhere that even when the wife had gone, we saw it in Revelation 12. Read on. Revelation 12. You saw that a man child was delivered. And next, what happened?
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And she brought forth, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman fled into the wilderness,
Right.
where she had a place prepared of God,
Right.
that they should feed her there 1,260 days.
So what is the woman still doing when the time was already written in the Bible that this is the time for the persecution, which is 1,260 days of dark ages? The woman was supposed to stay there, to be nourished there. The nourishment. God followed the woman to nourish. That's why it was a good decision to flee, to establish the headquarters there. But after establishing the headquarters and the persecution, when it's finished, the woman was supposed to go back. But God knew that the woman was going to refuse. Let's see. Then he came up with a plan. Let's see from Isaiah chapter 30.
Isaiah 30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Verse 9.
That this is a rebellious people.
Now, God, when we refuse to go back, we are now comfortable in the wilderness. God says we are rebellious. What are we rebelling? On going back. Where the Christian church was established, you are rebellious. So whenever you are seeing the word rebellious in the Bible, that's what we are rebelling. So he says now I'm calling you a rebellious person. You understand? Now read on. Uh-huh.
That this is a rebellious people, lying children, children that will not hear the law of the Lord.
Now how are we rebelling? The sooner we say the feast were nailed, we do not want to hear the law. So it means without keeping the feast, you don't even see the importance of going back. Why was 3 times a year advocated that we should worship in Jerusalem 3 times a year? Because that's where the facility to keep the feast is. When it says unleavened bread, you find it there. You don't find that in leavened bread elsewhere. You find it there. Because everywhere else there is leaven being eaten. So in that whole country, there is no leaven on the time of the leaven. So God had already prepared that place for worship. You understand? But he knew that when we flee, the woman fled, was going to refuse. The woman was surely going to refuse to come back because it was comfortable. Very nourished there, enjoying peace and safety and whatever. For God to say this woman should come back where the establishment was when Christ left The woman would not agree. So now God is saying in Isaiah chapter 30, the woman is now a rebellious one because doesn't want to come back. You understand?
Verse 10.
Right.
Which say to the seers.
Listen, what the woman says. How rebellious is the woman? Says, one, they refuse to hear the law. Which law are we refusing? Of course, not the 10 Commandments, because it was established in 1844 by Sister White. But the law, which was established, which was sent by A.T. Jones in 1888, we refused. That was the ceremonial law. The feasts that we're supposed to keep, and then in 2 years' time, Christ was supposed to come. We refused. We have got it chronicled everywhere. That 1888 message was refused. It was the law of God coming in form of feast. The new moon is the law of God. It's the law of, it's a statute. So these are the things that were given to Moses, which he is waiting for us to condemn us. Which Christ is saying, he is there waiting. The very Moses that you think was the good prophet is waiting. That's why they took him, waiting to make sure when we are now being scrutinized about the law that he wrote, he is there to say, why when I wrote Numbers? Why when I wrote Leviticus 23? Why when I wrote this? Why is somebody like this? Now God is saying, he is there waiting. And then the 2 witnesses are there to make sure whether they plead for us. If we despise Moses' law, we'll die without pity. This is what God is talking about. Now the woman was predicted in Isaiah chapter 30 that the woman was going to refuse to come back. Now, refuse to hear the law, that's refusing to come back. Once you are not keeping the feast, what's the need of you going to worship in Jerusalem? What's the need? You even understand the importance of it. You don't, because you are refusing to keep the feast. So what's the point? You say, I'm going to wait for God to come when I'm in here and whatever. But the Bible doesn't say so. The Bible has shown us the first fruits standing with Christ on Mount Zion, the one for 4,000. So it means the children, not all, the whole church refused. There are some who were sealed, who agreed to go back. So it is the first stage of the establishment of the kingdom. What is it shown? It's shown by people now taking the 3 times a year, worshiping Christ, worshiping God as he prescribed. 3 times a year were in Jerusalem, but they were supposed to relocate and start from the way the woman was left the metropolitan place, which is in Jerusalem. The way the woman left was supposed to go back with the whole children back. But now the children are starting to say, no, we have to keep 3 times a year as God has prescribed, and they are going 3 times a year. God is having pity on them because they are realizing we are supposed to be back. We are supposed to belong back, because the prescription to stay in the wilderness, we saw it in Revelation 12, is for only 1,260 days so that we are nourished. So it means the nourishment after 1,260 days is gone. So where is the nourishment? Back to the designed place. That's why I say, Isaiah saying, in the last days they will flock to the mountain of the Lord. They discover the food is no longer there. Where is the food? Back to the high mountains. Isaiah tells us, Isaiah 2 verse 2, the last days they will flock there, and the law shall, read properly Isaiah chapter 2 verse 2, right?
And it shall come to pass,
right,
in the last days, that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains,
right,
and shall be exalted above the hills,
right,
and all nations shall flow unto it.
Right, and what?
And many people shall go and say,
right,
Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord,
do you see that?
to the house of the God of Jacob,
Right,
and he will teach us of his ways.
you see where the nourishment is now. It's no longer in the wilderness, in the top of the mountain. That's why we are now being shown the 144,000 standing with Christ on Mount Zion. Now, where they are being nourished, the nourishment, the selling point. That's why in Ezekiel chapter 14, verse 16, it says, from year to year they will keep this feast of tabernacle, where if no one comes, there will be no rain. So where is the rain? The rain was in going to, read it, Zechariah chapter 14. sometimes I want proof so that we have proof of what I'm saying. You see? Zechariah chapter 14, verse 16.
Okay. And it shall come to pass
Right?
that everyone that is left of all the nations
Mhm.
which came against Jerusalem
Right?
shall even go up from year to year
Right?
to worship the King,
Mhm.
the Lord of hosts,
Right?
and to keep the feast of
You
tabernacles.
see those feasts that we say were nailed to the cross. What about this time? Yeah, you see? This time, it's from year to year to keep the feast. Right? And what? Mm-hmm.
And it shall be
Mm-hmm.
that whoso will not come up out of all the nations,
Right?
all the families of the earth,
Right?
unto Jerusalem,
Right?
to worship the King,
Mm-hmm.
the Lord of hosts,
Mm-hmm.
even upon them shall
Shall
be
be
no
no
rain.
rain. So you see, there has never been a time in the past where all nations will be keeping the Feast of Tabernacle. But this is the time of the latter rain, where we are preparing for the latter rain, that those who do not go will have no latter rain. Be it a physical rain or latter rain, spiritual rain, whatever, it was found in Jerusalem. You understand? Now, all this, why? Because the nourishment which had been promised to the woman when he fled to the wilderness, it was only conditional. It was only for 1,260, so that the woman is nourished. But after that, where is the nourishment coming from? 3 times a year, what are they going for? To get the nourishment or to get the truth. It comes from Mount Zion, like it was with Isaiah saying, the law shall be taught in Zion, on the top of the mountain. This is what is there. But God knew, go back to Isaiah chapter 30, God knew that the rebellious house will refuse. He calls someone who refuses as a rebellious. That's what he says, Isaiah 30 verse 9. He says, the rebellious. Well, that's why they remain sitting and says, where are you going? You know, there are people who rebel. They remain sitting and say, oh, he was stealing money. You must, God is saying you're rebellious. You understand? You're rebellious. In verse 9. Right. Read on.
Verse 9.
Yeah, verse 9. Yeah.
Isaiah 30.
Yeah, read now as a novel so that we understand. Yeah.
That this is a rebellious people,
Right.
lying children,
Right.
children that will not hear the law of the Lord,
Of course, the law is not heard. Right?
which say to the seers,
To the seers.
see not.
These are the prophets. What do they do? They accept there's a prophet? No, they say the prophet was the last one, or Sister White. That's the last prophet. They say to the prophet who is there on current prophets. They say, see not. You understand?
Which say to the seers,
Right?
see not.
See not.
And to the prophets,
Right?
prophesy
Prophesy
not
not.
unto us
We
right
do
things.
not want to hear. Why? You throw anything on Facebook which has to do with the law of God. Not even a like, not even a view, nothing. What is it? Prophesy unto us smooth things. Don't prophesy. Listen what they say. Listen, read. What
And
do
to
they
the
say?
prophets, prophesy not unto us right things.
We do not want to hear those
Speak
right things.
unto us smooth
We
things.
don't want to hear the right things. We want smooth things. You know, pulpits are all over. But it depends what they are preaching. What are they preaching? Smooth things? That's what they say. God predicted it. That the rebellious house will say, don't want to hear the law. You say anything about the feast, nailed to the cross. You are still in the dispensation. They are saying, prophesy unto us smooth things. Don't tell us about the law. That one we don't want to hear. But what we want to hear are the fables and the smooth things. And then we say powerful. You understand? Read on.
Prophesy not unto us right things.
Right?
Speak unto us smooth things.
Smooth things.
Prophesy deceits.
We want things. If you prophesy anything that will make them, go and see what people are prophesying. And then you say, Isaiah chapter 30 is really for sure being fulfilled. Prophesy deceit. Deceiving people. How do you deceive people? We saw in Dark Ages, people were about to be deceived by changing the times and laws. This is deceit. The gravest deceit is to say, today is a tabernacle when it is not. That's deceit. Today is a Lord's Supper during 11 o'clock in the morning. It's Lord's Supper when it's supposed to be supper, supposed to be at night. That's deceit. Prophesy unto us deceit. Do you understand? That's what they're saying. And what?
Get you out of the way
Get out of the way. Disfellowship them. Out. Those who are talking the right things, take them out. And leave those who prophesy deceit and smooth things. And what?
Turn aside,
Turn
out
aside.
of the path.
Out of the path.
Cause the Holy One of Israel
Right?
to cease
Right.
from before us.
You block them. You block them. Don't even listen. Don't listen. Cause them to cease. Don't even watch. Don't even, is it not happening? Yes, it is. As I've got no gospel to tell people not to watch anything. Me, I watch anything. I watch anything as long as it comes with the name of the Lord. I watch and I analyze. Is that true? Is that not? I watch every pulpit. I watch it. I read any book. Do you understand? Any book. I only take what is right. That's what it says in Thessalonians. It says, quench not the spirit, but listen and check to the law and to the testimony. If it is supported by the law and the testimony, take what is right. I've read. How would you know people are in error when you don't read what they write? I've read everything from most people, every denomination, not even one denomination, but everywhere, only to see, okay, here they were right. Here, I think they should correct it by this verse. I don't have any message to say don't. My message is saying, scratch like a hungry chicken. Blessed are those who are hungry. Because when a chicken is hungry, it scratches everywhere. I read everywhere. I listen to anything and I say, this one, though it does not know about the Sabbath, though it does not know about this, but he is honest in what he knows. That's what I do. And I applaud everyone. I have don't listen, don't what. No. Check with the law and the testimony and see what is right and take what is right and leave what is not right. That's what it is in the Bible. So here they're saying, this rebellious house, they say, prophesy to cause the Holy One to shut up, cause the one to out. To what? All these are not tactics from God. These are tactics from the bad one. These are tactics from the devil himself. God has chronicled them in Isaiah chapter 30. Now let's read. Are you on verse 12?
Yeah. Wherefore, thus said the Holy One of Israel, because ye despise this word and trust in oppression and perverseness.
Now, you see, when the Israelites were in Egypt, Moses came to them, wanted to take them out. Right? Why? Because they were in oppression. They were slaves. They were bricklayers. So God wanted to release them from slavery. So God is saying, you have been told to go back to your headquarters already, but you refused because you trust in oppression. Do you understand? When you say the movement, which was Moses' movement, was a type, it should actually be exactly like Moses' movement. Moses' movement, if Moses' movement was together with Pharaoh's legislation, he was not going to win. He was not going to win. God wanted these peculiar people to be only listening from him and him alone. That's why he made the army which was following Moses was drowned, so that they do not corrupt Moses and his lot. They are gods. So God, by saying move, he wants now to start the kingdom which will only listen to God and God alone, not hooked to the world. Do you understand? So we should have one thing which God has said, move on, move back, so that we continue what Moses was. What Moses was and the Israelites, they were all obeying God, and that was it. This is why the kingdom has to be established, where he will have a kingdom of his own, of people who listen to him and him alone. This is the plan of heaven. But when he says rebellious, it means when he says, let's start. Come on, let's start. And then we say, no, everything was nailed to the cross. We can't. And God is saying, when you despise the law of Moses, so how can he start with you? How can he start with you? So let's read on Isaiah chapter 30. It's interesting. So that's the first step. So God is still stuck on the first step. So if time will permit, we'll go to the third, to the second, and the third. And you see, it is in stages how the kingdom is going to be established. The very first thing is to invite us back, because the persecution is finished. The woman has to go back. But he says rebellious or refused. Instead, anyone who comes with any law on feasting cause the whole one to cease. Because what do they say to the prophets? Prophesy deceit. If you can stay with us as long as you prophesy deceit. And there are some people who say, I'm just going to go there and just going to tell them what is truth. You are lying. You are joking. Because when you go there, you have got to make sure you prophesy deceit. When there is no deceit, there's a cause the Holy One to come out of us. We need smooth things. We need deceit. Do you understand? So, as long as you want God, you will stay with God and God alone. You will never be persuaded to prophesy deceit. You'll never be persuaded to prophesy smooth things. You tell it as it is. Call a spade by its name. You understand? Now read on.
Because ye despise this word, and trust in oppression and perverseness.
Do you see?
And stay thereon.
Right? And you want to stay there. You understand? God has prescribed. He saw that you are going to refuse to go back where the woman was given eagle's wings to fly. So because you want to stay there, you do not want to come back. By coming back, how do you do it? By keeping God's laws and now coming back. But if the laws are being nailed to the cross, you are refusing. You want to stay there. So because you did that, what? Read on.
Therefore, this iniquity
right?
shall be to you as a breach ready to fall,
right?
swelling out in a high wall,
right?
whose breaking cometh suddenly at an instant.
So the breaking will come suddenly, and that's why you have the cry, it will never sink, it will never this and that. But the Bible doesn't say so. You know, that's what they were doing, the inhabitants of Jericho. They thought the walls were so strong. They thought they were so strong they will never fall. But God was saying, just march. March for 7 days. Quiet, no talking. What? March. So God is saying, just continue, go back and worship 3 times a year and keep the feasts. Just come. On the 7th day they marched. Because the inhabitants, they thought they were on a strong wall. But on the 7th day, the wall fell down. It tumbled down. That's a type. Do you understand? So here, he said, because you want to stay there, you want to be rebellious, you don't want to hear the law. You are saying even the prophets should prophesy deceit and smooth things, and you are causing the Holy One to be disfellowshipped, come out of you, and whatever. So because of that, it will come suddenly. Sudden destruction, which Paul is talking about. When they say peace and safety, sudden destruction. Okay, read on.
Isaiah 30,
yeah. What verse are you? Verse 15 is what I want.
15, yeah.
How is it going to be accomplished?
For thus saith the Lord God,
right?
the Holy One of Israel,
right?
In returning
right.
and rest.
He's confirming we are going to return. Not everyone is going to stay there. Some will come back. Now, so it will be divided into 2 people. Those who want to continue staying and those who want to come back. Now, because now the Holy One of Israel, what is happening? Read on.
In returning and rest
right?
shall ye be saved.
Right. So, but you are going to return. God is telling us, you are surely going to return. But in returning, you shall find rest. You understand? You will be peaceful when you return. But the returning is there. Whether people refuse, but the 144,000 will return. You understand? That's why they are on Mount Zion, because they returned. Now, and in returning you shall be peaceful.
In returning and rest shall ye be saved.
Right.
In quietness.
How are we going to be saved? In returning. We're not going to be saved in returning, but in returning. So this strengthens those who have taken up the feast, the law of God, the 10 Commandments, as it was written to Moses. Because even the animals were nailed to the cross. They were standing in for Jesus Christ. Now we are Christians, isn't it? But he's saying, in returning, you shall be blessed. You shall be saved in returning. But not in staying, but in returning. Read that verse again.
In returning and in rest shall ye be saved.
Right. So we are only going to be saved in returning. Not in staying, in returning. Now,
In quietness
right?
and in confidence
You see,
shall be your
we should
strength.
be as quiet as those who are walking around Jericho. In quietness, in confidence that what we are doing is what God has instructed for the day. You understand? In
quietness
right?
and in confidence
Right?
shall be your strength, and
Right.
he would not.
Where is our strength? In returning. In quietness. Do it quietly like it was with those who were walking around Jericho. Quietly. Only waiting for orders from heaven. Quietly. Because we know for sure this word was supposed to be starting from 1888. When it was rejected. That's what people should have started doing. And in 2 years, Christ was supposed to establish the kingdom. So now, okay, we have found where we went astray. So if we start from there in returning, in quietness, when they say, oh, have they come? Oh, are they going again? Oh, have they come? Quietly and peacefully and make confidence. Then you are going to be saved. Read on. We are only on the first step. The first step of the establishment of the kingdom is that you see this movement. You understand? The movement of returning. Right?
But he said, No.
No. But
for
you
we will
see,
flee.
God said, we refused. And through Isaiah, God is saying, but you said no. You said you're not going to go back. Are they saying no? Yes. When they say there are no feasts, these were nailed to the cross, the answer is already there. It's prescribed by God, and you are going to say no to them. You said no, because once you start keeping them, you start returning. But when you say no, God said, you said no. Because the woman was supposed to stay for 1,260 days and go back. But you said no, we want to return. Right?
But you said no,
Right.
for we will flee upon horses.
By saying no, he's saying, you are saying to God, to return peacefully, we want. Because we're saying, when you are returning, you find rest. You return peacefully. But what did you answer, Isaiah? We said, no, we will rather fly on horses. You know, flying on horses is someone who is now telling you to when you are now running away from the mark of the beast, that's where you are going to see this scripture being fulfilled. You will fly on horses. This is what our answer is. We don't want to return when it is peaceful. But how are we going to return? We will fly. That's why the 144,000 were there. They escaped. We saw Isaiah saying, the escaped ones. They had to escape. Isaiah chapter 66. Go to Isaiah 66, verse 18. When they stand with Christ on Mount Zion, what are they called? They are escaping.
Verse 18.
Uh-huh.
For I know their works
Right.
and their thoughts.
Right.
It shall come that I will gather all nations and tongues,
Right.
and they shall come and see my glory.
Right.
And I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations.
Right.
To
So
Tarshish.
did you see the 144,000 escaped? Now God is saying you will actually come. You will, because God's word will never fall down. When He says come back, He means what He means. And but when you say no, but God is saying you will escape. You will fly on the horses. You will still come back. Go to Isaiah chapter 30. Have you finished verse 16?
Verse 16. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Finished.
16 you have finished. So go to the fall of Assyria, page 7. God's people. Just down there under the question 5 there. God's people, not
Okay. God's people are a.
Okay.
God's people are a rebellious house.
Right?
They prefer to trust in those that oppress them, and say to God's seers to see not, and to the prophets to prophesy not the truth, but to speak smooth things and prophesy lies.
Right. Right.
Their iniquity is as a breach in a high wall,
Right.
which will fall suddenly at an instant.
Right. If you go down below there, there is after the Isaiah 30, near question 6, right?
Where it says,
Near question, the Lord says,
okay. The Lord says,
Mhm.
though at first the people refuse to go,
Right?
yet He knows they
They
will
will
go
go.
when they have to flee.
Now, God is saying, you, like it was with when they sent for, in the last king which reigned in Israel before they went to Babylon captivity, is King Zedekiah. You remember? There were so many, calls for them to come peacefully, but they're to go now being chased. Do you understand? Now, here is saying they are refusing to go, or they are refusing to keep this law, but they will keep it. Or they will, once they start keeping it, they will go. This is the commentary. It says, the Lord says, though at first the people refuse to go, yet He knows they will go when they have to flee. And what?
And He would not.
Right?
But He said,
Mm.
no,
Mm.
for we will flee upon horses.
Right?
Therefore shall ye flee.
And then God says, okay, you answered, you will flee. Therefore, you will flee.
Therefore shall ye flee.
Because you are refusing to go. But God is saying, therefore, you will flee. Right? And what?
And we will ride upon the swift.
Mhm.
Therefore shall they that pursue you be swift.
Right. So he's saying we are going to be right upon the swift. The swift is the planes. Then he says, okay, those who pursue will be more swifter. Right. Uh-huh.
Therefore shall they that pursue you be swift.
Mm-hmm.
At the rebuke of 5 shall ye flee.
At the rebuke of 5, you will flee. And what?
Till ye be left
It's
as a
from 15
beacon.
up to 17, Isaiah 30. Uh-huh.
Then till ye shall be left as a beacon upon the top of a mountain,
Right?
and as an ensign on an hill.
Did they finally go? They finally went till they were a beacon. Where now are they settled? Now, do you believe that there is a time like that when all of us except those who refuse, those who accept the voice of Moses, the statutes, the 10 commandments, the judgments, they will flee. They will flee on top. If they cannot flee peacefully, they will escape, and they will find themselves on the top of the mountain in Israel, right? And this is what the majority, that the majority
Will wait till they have to flee
they are,
is certain.
those who are starting to keep the feast, keep it. Because we know that when Christ comes, He says it is in the symbolic service. He is coming, He's in the symbolic service. So when He comes, He finds those who are keeping the feast there peacefully. They are buying tickets, boarding the plane, peacefully going, and Christ comes to join them. But there are some who are going now to flee, going to the place, because that's why we see them. Read from 17 to 20. Same Isaiah 30.
1,000 shall flee at the rebuke of 1.
Do you see how they will flee? 1,000, they will flee at the 1, right?
At the rebuke of 5 shall ye flee,
Right?
till ye be left as a beacon upon the top of the mountain, and an ensign on an hill.
Right. So did you see in Ezekiel 9 how many angels were supposed to slay? Go back to Ezekiel 9. How many? They're coming in the house of God. They are, from this one, Ezekiel 9.
He cried also in mine ears with a loud voice, saying, cause them that have charge over the city to draw near,
Right?
even every man with his destroying weapon in his hand.
How many came? Right?
And behold,
Right?
6 men
So 6 men came. And what?
came from the way of the higher gate,
Right?
which lieth toward the north,
Right?
and every man a slaughter weapon
Do you
in
see
his
there are
hand.
people, these are angels, right?
And one man
Uh-huh.
among them
Right?
was clothed with linen,
Right.
with a writer's ink on it by his side.
So when there are 6, one of them is Christ, with the writer's ink on, putting the seal. What seal? The information of this gathering, this kingdom establishing. This is sealing us completely. One man is doing that. But what about these 5? They have slaughter weapons. Did you understand? Now when Isaiah is saying you will flee after the rebuke of 5 men. Which are these 5 men? Did you see the 5 men with slaughter weapons? These are the ones that were just following Christ when he was putting seal and seeing those who are saying it was nailed to the cross, and he's seeing them, he's marking them, say, okay, you are down to the slaughter. And those who are receiving the seal, they are being marked in only one house. That's why the judgment begins in the house of God first. And then when it's time for the 5 men with slaughter weapons to act, we hear them in verse 4. Go to 4.
And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem,
Right.
and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof.
So it's those 10 commandment keepers. Set a mark on them. That's why we're saying the sealing process is now. And who is in front? It's a man with writer's ink on. But there are 5 working with him, because all of them, there are 6. But the one is putting the seal. But the commission will come to the other 5. Read on.
And to the others he said in mine hearing,
Right?
Go ye after him
Right.
through the city, and smite. Let not your eye spare,
Right.
neither have ye pity.
Right. So you see, there's someone now commissioning those 5. Go through the city. This is what happens. Before the earth has come to an end, judgment finishes first in the house of God. Then it's going to spread to the other, to the whole world. But this is the coming of Christ to establish the kingdom. It starts with these 5 men. Now, God is saying in Isaiah 30, go to Isaiah 30, you will flee from verse 17.
1,000 shall flee.
Do you see how many are fleeing now? Because these are the people with a seal. But because they were only sighing and crying, they were not acting, they are part of the 144,000, but they were not sighing and crying. I mean, they were only sighing and crying, no strength to start into action. You understand? But now they were saying, those who are refusing, these 5 men are after them. 1,000 will start running. This is how it's going to happen. Now read on.
1,000 shall flee at the rebuke of 1. At the rebuke of 5 shall he flee.
Right? So these 5 ones are released now. Go after them. Go after them. So that's why God is saying, you are refusing to come now. Yeah? To join in the keeping of the feast 3 times a year. You are refusing. You will do it while fleeing from these 5 men. After now the kingdom is being established, you will start running for dear life. With that seal only for sighing and crying. You didn't do anything. You were sighing and crying, but you had no power to start what others were doing. Right.
Verse 18.
Verse 18, yeah.
And therefore
Right.
will the Lord wait, that he may be gracious unto you, and therefore will he be exalted.
Right. So you will wait and say, okay, you've got a seal. Are you going to do it now? Are you going to flee now? Are you going to go now? No, because he said finally they will go. You said no. You said no. You are listening to people who are saying we will never. Those people are fun. Because the Holy One, they just come and preach smooth things. This is what is happening. And then say God is saying, I'll be grateful, and say, because why is he grateful? Grateful because you've got a seal. Now he's saying, okay, you do what we are told. You do what we are told. Start keeping the feast. Read on.
And therefore will the Lord wait, that he may be gracious unto you.
Right.
And therefore will he be exalted,
Right.
that he may have mercy upon you.
Right.
For the Lord is a God of judgment.
Right.
Blessed are all they that wait for him.
Right.
For the people shall dwell in Zion at Jerusalem. Thou shalt weep no more. You will be very gracious unto
Did you
thee.
hear where the people will dwell? Now he's instructing those who remained. You knew that the woman was given eagle's wings to fly in the wilderness. Now you go back in Zion for the people in Zion, in Jerusalem, where the Christian church had been established. Now he's telling us, go back. You go back. After the 5 men now are busy pursuing, when he says, go now and slay utterly, young and small. And then people now flee. Why? Because they've got a sign. We're seeing the fate of those who refused to get a sign, to sigh and cry. And also we are seeing the fate of those who received the seal, who were sighing and crying. They are being given grace. to go now, and are told that the people will live in Zion. So they now go and inhabit the kingdom. It's going to be established. We are still on the first step. We haven't gone to the second step, right? So read on. Are you on verse 20?
Verse 19.
Right, go 20.
20.
Mm-hmm.
And though the Lord give you the bread of adversity,
right,
and the water of affliction, yet shall not thy teachers be removed in a corner anymore.
Right.
But thine eyes shall see thy teachers.
Right. Now we are being introduced to your fresh teachers. Because that's why we are saying in Zechariah chapter 6 that there were two leadership. We saw two bay horses and two grizzled horses all pulling one chariot in Zechariah chapter 6. Now, it's because there is two leadership in the house of God. The other leadership is trained, and we know them, we recognize them, but there are some who are not recognized, who are leading, so it's, in a nutshell, we have laymen and ecclesiastical authority. So now we are being introduced to your new teachers. Do you understand? Your new teachers. Go to Testimonies, volume 5. Testimonies for the Church, volume 5, page 80. That the days.
80.
Mm-hmm.
The days are fast approaching.
These days, the days that I'm talking about, they are fast approaching, right?
When there will be a great perplexity and confusion.
There will be great perplexity and confusion. You see, people are fleeing. You understand? There will be confusion. And what?
Satan, clothed in angel robes, will deceive, if possible, the
very
elect.
elect. Why? How does it deceive? You know the deception is only on time. That's why even in Dark Ages, the beast just concentrated on changing times and laws, times, festivals, and whatever. That's all. He knew that we are deceiving. We are deceiving people by the time, right? And now he says he will deceive the very elect. So you see, the deception is on time. It's just on time.
There will be God's many and Lord's many.
Lord's many. So God's many are saying, "Oh, this is a tabernacle. We don't care. This is a new moon. We don't care. We don't." All that was nullified. I was talking to someone on Facebook the other day, and he was saying, the new moons, all were taken off from the cross. Then I said, okay, tell me in Isaiah chapter 66, verse 22, when it says from one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another, who is now taking off that nail that you said they were nailed to the cross? Where is the nail now? And someone who was listening was saying, this is a fact. He just answered and said, fact. Why? Because how can you say it was removed when it is there in the new heaven and the new earth? How can you say? So if you see, it's a deception. It's a deception. This were all nullified. And then you find a verse is saying they are there in the new heaven and the new earth. And you find even Sister White say this association assembling together in one new moon to another is what we are going to be doing in the nations above. Now, so who was telling you that these were nullified? Even some people pretend not to understand English. When something is a shadow or a type, they seem not to understand what a shadow means. A shadow is something that is practiced before it is fulfilled. Now, when they were practicing killing an animal, it was to be nullified by the proper body of Christ when the body was killed on the cross. So that stopped. But something that the Bible says is still a shadow of things to come. How can you stop it when it is a shadow? It's like the Israelites would have stopped killing the lamb before Christ had come. They wouldn't. So the lamb was only stopped after Christ came. So you pretend that you don't know English when you spend years and years learning English. So you understand, we should take the Bible as it is. When it says the new moon is still a shadow, so it means it's still binding. It says so in Colossians chapter 2. Go to Colossians. So you'll come back to that quote on page 8, a testimony for the church.
Verse 14.
Verse 16.
16.
Mhm.
Let no man,
Mm.
therefore, judge you in meat or in drink,
Now, someone pretends not to understand that English. Judging meaning when you are eating the meat which is the bread and wine. Bread was meat, and drink is the wine. When you are eating that, no one should judge you. Judge you does not mean stop. Judge you means no one should question it. You understand? And what?
let no man,
Mm.
therefore, judge you in meat or
Let
in
no
drink,
man question you in meat and drink,
or in respect of an holy day,
or in respect of a holiday, because we have holidays. Nobody should question.
or
And
of
what?
the new moon,
Or even of the new moon,
or of the Sabbath days.
or of the Sabbath. Some even go and say this Sabbath day is not the one for the 7-day Sabbath. Who told you that? Don't feed the verse with your thoughts. Now, and what?
Which are a shadow of the things to come.
Did you hear that? All these are a shadow of things to come. So, do you nullify a shadow?
But the body is of Christ.
The body which Colossians chapter 2 verse 14 is the body of Christ. Let's see the body in verse 14.
Verse 14.
Mhm.
Blotting out the handwriting of the ordinances.
So the ordinances are the ones with the body. What? Because in Numbers 19 verse 1 to 2, those are the ordinances, the animal sacrifices. Those are the ordinances. These are blotted because they represented the body of Christ. But the rest which has been read from verse 16, from the meat which was the bread, the drink which was the wine, from the holiday, from the Sabbath, from the new moon, they are all still a shadow of things to come. Then you pretend you do not know the meaning of the word shadow. You don't know it. You only know it when it suits yourself. So if it is a shadow, it means it's still binding. It's still having future fulfillment. So it should continue, and that's the way Paul has explained that. That's where the deception is. Listen to the next verse. That's where the deception is. They will use this verse from Paul, one, to stop the 10 Commandments. Some have stopped the 10 Commandments, and those who have taken the 10 Commandments up, they will use still the same verse to stop the new moons, to stop the feast, to stop everything. But it's because they do not understand that in front of that sentence is, these are a shadow of things to come. Now let's hear Paul saying, this very verse is going to make people beguiled. Verse 18. Mm-hmm.
Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility.
So did you see that the deception comes from that verse? Because people will come and beguile you. They form different churches by using that verse and say, all that has been nailed. Let no one judge you. But they do not realize that the sentence says they are still a shadow of things to come. So we continue. They are still binding until they meet also their fulfillment. Like it was with the ordinance on verse 14, which were the animal sacrifice. They met their fulfillment on the cross when the body of Christ, which was represented by the animals, was killed. So it's just a mystery which the devil has taken advantage of, but not to the very elect. Not to the very elect. Now here we see on page 80.
Page 80.
Testimonies to ministers.
The days are fast approaching, when there will be great perplexity and confusion. Satan, clothed in angel robes, will deceive, if possible, the very elect. There will be God's many and Lord's many.
Right.
Every wind of doctrine will be blowing.
Right.
Those who have rendered supreme homage to science falsely so called.
What is this science falsely so called? It's the so-called theology. That's the science. Those who have supreme homage. Now I'm talking about the change of teachers, which we are talking about, that there are two horses pulling a chariot, one chariot. Now the changeover, listen to the changeover there in Testimonies. Those who have trusted to intellect, genius, or talent, will not then stand at the head of rank and file. So they won't stand because they trusted to what? They trusted to their doctorates. They trusted to their genius, to the whatever they have been trained to do. They will not stand at the rank and file. And what? Why?
Those who have proved themselves unfaithful will not then be entrusted with the flock.
No. So the flock was somewhere. So I'm saying, when now we are going back, as God is saying, the wife has to go back, there will be a change of flock. There will be a change of teachers or a change of leadership. Because even testimonies is saying, they will stop leading there at that point. What? Read on. Mm-hmm.
In the last solemn work,
right?
Few great men
and
will be
those
engaged.
great men that we have trusted, few of them will be engaged. Thank God, at least there are few joining in, right? Uh-huh.
In the last solemn work,
right?
Few great men will be engaged.
Mm-hmm.
They are self-sufficient.
Why would the great men not be engaged? Few of them just. Why is the bulk of them not being engaged? They are self-sufficient. What? Uh-huh.
Those who have in the last solemn work,
mm-hmm.
few great men will be engaged.
Right?
They are self-sufficient, independent of God, and He cannot use them.
What do they have? Doctorate. I've got my doctorate. So God is set aside. What do they have? I've got this. I did this one. I self-sufficient. But God in this last week, that's why He embarks on the layman. Why? Because he's not trained. He's fully trusting in God for everything, for talent, for word, for everything, so that the job is well done. But those who are trusting in, let me research, what did I write on those notes when I was being trained by philosophers or whatever, you are trusting in bookwork. You should trust in God. It doesn't matter whether we know how to speak English or we don't know, as long as the word comes out and someone has a meaning out of the word. That's what God, because I was going to go as far as when that time starts, even everybody now is introduced to a language of heaven. All these languages that we are bragging about and saying, I know how to speak proper, pure, whatever. Everything will come to a halt. Now people start learning the language from heaven. They are given the fresh language because they all came at the Tower of Babel anyway. So that language which they lost at the Tower of Babel is reinstated back. Why were they given different languages in the Tower of Babel? Why? Because they were doing something wrong. They were all constructing that tower so that when the rains come after the flood of Noah, so that when the flood comes, they know how to run up. They wanted to long to be even in heaven with that tower. And God confounded them with different tongues. All these tongues that we are having, from some people bragging when they want to mention the name of God, they say they mention in Hebrew term instead. When you are speaking a proper English, you want to change. Why do you want to change? Because they all came from the Tower of Babel. The only language from heaven is going to be introduced. When the kingdom starts, God sends us back to the language which was there before the Tower of Babel. So don't waste your time trying to change and whatever so that you look a bit more pious. But what you should do is all languages came from the Tower of Babel. At least long to have a language which somebody can hear. What's the point of mentioning names that someone who doesn't know, and you want to mention with some, especially they want to use the Hebrew tongue when they are speaking normal English, and then you divert word. Why don't you just mention it in if you want, I can put a full topic on that so that you understand the languages that we are trying to brag with. They all cease when the kingdom starts. So here we are being told on few great men will be involved. Why? Read on.
They are self-sufficient, independent of God, and He cannot use them.
He can't use them.
If
you want God to use you, be dependent on. Forget your training. Forget whatever you have done. Paul says, what I do is I forget the past. When I preached a sermon which everybody came crying and 200 something thousand people were baptized, forget about it. Just think of God each morning and ask for fresh supply of grace of God. Don't ever go with a review of what you have done in the past and say, because I did this, I have so many views when I did this. Some people break with the views and break with whatever. Break with one thing. do you have a good relationship with God? And that will satisfy you. That should surely satisfy you daily. That's why even Christ, when he walked in this earth, he was daily asking for fresh supplies of the grace of heaven. No, otherwise you could have said, oh, yesterday Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, I woke him up. Then you will go everywhere, people following and say, because he woke Lazarus up. No, he didn't even brag about what he did in the day before. But he was asking daily for a fresh supply. Daily. So that's why God is saying he does not use them. Why? Because they do not want to use him. They want to use the books and whatever and the big words and come off from them. Go to what God wants. He wants your heart clean each minute, asking and dependent upon him for fresh supplies of the grace of God. And that you will enjoy your work with God. Do not brag about anything. Don't brag about whatever it be. Moses, there was no leader more than Moses in his day who could use a rod to part the Red Sea. He could have gone, you know what? You are crying for water. Didn't you see what we did on once he ever did that, God was not going to use him. Now, when he hit the stone for the second time, that's why God discarded him. He discarded him because he pleaded. That's why on Mount Pisgah, when he died, they took him up because he pleaded. But the punishment of not seeing Canaan, he was given because he bragged and said, where do you want us to get the water from? And instead of talking to the stone, he went and hit it the second time. And God said, come back, come. I won't use you again. I won't use you. You brag with anything. Some brag, they say they are men. They are the ones supposed to be used. The females want to be used. God won't use you. Don't ever brag with anything. Don't brag with anything. Brag with one thing which Jeremiah says. If there is anything we have to brag, is that he understands me and that he is quite dependent on God. That's what you should brag. Don't brag with anything, whether with your gender or with whatever, or with your color or with your nativity or with anything. God does not realize all that. God realizes one thing. Someone who is completely dependent on him without anything, considering nothing except that he is useless and God use me, I'm useless. I am useless as anything. But when you see, I'm a man, I'm the one supposed to be used. He doesn't use women. He doesn't. You see what? He will never use you. He will never. Let me tell you, he will never. But you only use when you see your weaknesses, when you see how weak you are, and when you see how dependent you are on God. Then you stop waffling nothing, and you start depending on God. Now we'll finish that topic and then we can wind off that one. Because we have lots of weeks talking about preparation of the coming of Christ. We can't finish all in one day. By the time we finish, he should be at the door, surely at the door. We should be knowing exactly what we are supposed to do. But the thing is that he said we have to come back. Where this woman carried with eagle's wings, he's got to come back. He cannot die in the wilderness. But he says, you will come. You said no. You will come. You will come. And that's the first stage. And when we meet next, we will debate the second stage. And if possible, we go to the third stage. So at the third stage, we know we are settled, home and settled. We now know exactly how the kingdom is going to be started. We will study it, don't worry. We will study. God has given us the grace to study it. When he comes, it should be there as a seal of truth. Now read on and finish.
The Lord has faithful servants,
right?
Who in the shaking,
right,
testing time,
right,
will be disclosed to view.
This is the sealing time. This is the testing time. God will not use the so-called talents and the so-called signs, so-called. That's what we had. But he will change those who he's going to use. he has a lot of servants to use who at the testing time he will disclose. Now we are seeing some people we never even dreamt of who can come here and tell you exactly how things are in the Bible, and they say, where are you getting this? Where are you getting that? He has the people who have not even bowed their knee to Baal, who are ready to do his work. Yes, don't ever break and say, I will, I'm a man, no male, no female. No, he has a lot of his creation who are ready to do that job. And what? Mm-hmm.
There are precious ones.
Now
hidden.
They are hidden.
Who have not bowed the knee to Baal.
They are hidden. They never bowed their knee to. And when they come, you really know. When the 12 disciples, when Judas died, they knew they are short of one disciple, which is and they tried by all means to make sure they ordained Matthias, who never even worked. We never even heard about him after the ordination. But God had a precious one who was hiding, who was in the other side, killing the Christians, was Saul, who he knew he was going to change his name to become Paul, so that he is a powerful. And do you know what? When he joined the 12 disciples, the 11 disciples, he became the 12th. But he was their leader. Imagine, he was their leader. What we have heard about Paul is equivalent to what we heard about Moses. Moses was the writer of most books. And Paul wrote most books in the New Testament. He was their leader. And there are people who are surprised, who have been in this established truth of the road and the branch, and they have been for years in that. And they see somebody coming, and they say, well, you cannot lead. You cannot lead because you just came. You understand? You go back to see how God uses people. You can be years and years, but you are still. It's like when you are playing a team in football. Football has got numbers of people who are very important. The teammates are important, but there is a most important among us all. There is 11. I don't know. I'm not a footballer. There are 11. But among us, the 11, there is a most important who they cannot do without. They are there. They are most important people. The ones who is a goalkeeper is a goalkeeper. And you can be playing that team, but you are not the goalkeeper. The one who is number 7 can only be number 7. The one who is number what, I don't know how many numbers. I don't know. I'm yet to learn about that. But if I
missed that. Could you say it again, please?
If I have the time, sorry, it's my phone is now saying I'm. But let me tell you one thing. This football of heaven has got candidates who are suitable for each post. He has a lot hiding there, who in the testing time, he reveals. And then you say, where was this one? And sometimes some people come to lead you. You understand? And some people come to join in, and you marvel and say, what a talent. So listen, read on. Read.
There are precious ones.
They are precious ones.
Now hidden.
They are hidden.
Who have not bowed their knee to bow.
They did not bow their knee to bow.
They have not had.
What was Baal doing? Changing times and laws. So they did not bow their knee to bow. They did not change these times and laws and take it. They were just doing it not consciously. But the person who God does not want is who consciously know that this is wrong and does it. You understand? Mm-hmm.
They have not had the light which has been shining in a concentrated blaze upon you.
Right.
But it may be under a rough and uninviting exterior.
Right.
The pure brightness of a genuine Christian character will be revealed.
Right. So you see, there will be a changeover. And we saw it when we were reading here in Isaiah chapter, when we went to chapter 30. Did you go to verse 24?
Let me see.
Isaiah chapter 30. When we saw that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 20.
Mm-hmm. 24.
The oxen, likewise, and the young...
Chapter 10, sorry. Chapter 10, verse 24.
Isaiah 10.
Verse 24.
Therefore, thus saith the Lord God of hosts, O my people that dwellest in Zion, be not afraid of the Assyrian.
Right. And
he shall smite the
25.
For yet a very little while,
Mm-hmm.
and the indignation shall cease,
Uh-huh.
and mine anger in their destruction.
Right. So it says, he will send these 5 men. You are going to flee. You are going to flee. He says, if you want, it's just something like I've seen in other countries, especially when this coronavirus started. Countries sent plans to take their citizens. Why? They're protecting them, isn't it? So that's what God is doing. He's saying, when it's peaceful, you go peacefully. But he says, you said no. But you let these 5 men come, you will flee. So eventually, when we are reading the Bible and we are seeing now the law is coming from Zion in the last days, it shall be established. And then in the last days we see the 144,000 are standing with Christ on Mount Zion. How did it all happen? These are the nitty-gritties we are studying and seeing how then do they stand on Mount Zion? How then do others follow? How then? So all this is on step 1. So today we were only on step 1 on how the kingdom starts. It starts by us keeping these feasts 3 times a year, only to be there. When he says the times of the symbolic service is where the second coming is, it means he will come and find us in one of the feasts. But what will happen to those remaining who are sealed, who have been sighing and crying? They will follow, but being pursued by the 5 slaying men in Ezekiel chapter 9. Now, does it make it clear? Does it make it clear? The things are coming a bit clearer and clearer and clearer. By the time we finish studying about the coming of Christ, I'm sure you and I will be ready, packing our bags, so that we go and meet Christ in the Holy Land when he comes to establish the kingdom. So the kingdom will surely be established. But God has his people not yet ready because they are not studying. But thank God, he has provided these studies which we are doing on the new moon, on the Sabbath, on the feasts, so that you and I can fortify in the message and be saved. May God bless this study.